everyone, Nicole Russo and Ashley Mailloux bringing you back to the Oaks Countdown. And as the countdown continues, it looks like we've established our clear Kentucky Oaks favorite in Good Cheer, who will roll back to Churchill Downs to a track she's already a graded stakes winner on, Unbeaten. As we look at her updated past performances following her score in the Fairgrounds Oaks, her average winning margin, 7 lengths. She's coming off a career high buyer. Ashley, can you find any vulnerabilities in this filly?
No, I mean, I still think it goes back to the conversation we've had around her before that I'd like to see her against more fillies, right? I mean, the field wasn't that small compared to what she had seen in some of her starts, and she was able to beat some horses that had some, I guess, good cases to be made for. Her Laugh was in there. Quick Kick was in there. Gowell's Delight. And then there was kind of a little bit of an up-and-coming horse in here, Ahavah, who was stretching out in distance. I think she did what she needed to do. She showed that she could get a trip mid-pack and make a late run, and she didn't be much the best. So we've kind of talked about it too. She was going into that race 5 for 5 in her career. Probably still would have been what I think will be the Kentucky Oaks favorite, even with a defeat there if she finishes second or third. And she's still the horse to beat. In terms of her progression, in terms of figs, it hasn't been a huge progression, but she's still at the top.
I do want to talk about the filly you mentioned, who was the runner-up to her here, Ahavah. That, of course, is the half-sister to Grade 1 winner Vava, won her debut sprinting, then stretched out here, obviously, against a quality foe in the Fairgrounds Oaks, and was a gallant second, I thought. And they've got some options with her for sure if they want to keep going this 2-turn race route, or if they want to cut her back. There are a lot of nice prizes for 3-year-old fillies coming up around 1 turn. I think Ahavah might have established herself as one of the most interesting fillies of this 3-year-old class.
Just so lightly raced. I mean, the kind of options for her are endless, and where she goes and how she develops. She could be a very, very talented filly. And I think the thing that I found really nice to see is on social media. I remember looking at an interview with Cherie DeVoe talking about this filly, who obviously they were impressed with her win when she was able to break her maiden, and they knew that this was a tall task, but if she was doing anything less than awesome in terms of training, they wouldn't have put her in this spot. And I think that was rewarded. Even though you're second behind Good Cheer, a filly who we've talked about is the horse on the Kentucky Oaks Road that is going to be favored, is the horse to beat in a lot of people's minds. And to run second to her, you're only beaten by 3.5. You're the pace setter, you're stretching out. She looks to have a bright future, and we'll just see what they decide to do with her from here.
Now, the other Oaks Points race on the weekend went to a filly who I think might be a live long shot for the Oaks, particularly if the track comes up wet. Bless the Broken. Now, she won the Bourbonnette Oaks on the Tapeta at Turfway, but unlike some other Bourbonnette winners in recent years, she has the past dirt form to go back to, and she had been knocking at the door against the likes of Simply Joking, against the likes of Good Cheer, and I think this is a filly who is a live long shot for the Kentucky Oaks.
And you just wonder a little bit about the surface. Did that help her a little bit? Obviously, it was her first time racing at Turfway Park, but different. It's not dirt. It is the Tapeta, and how horses then go from there. What do they do? That's a little bit of a question mark. But we can't forget trainer Will Walden had her cross-entered in the spot at the Fairgrounds. They opted for this. I actually got to spoke with Johnny V after the race, and he seemed very impressed with her. Got that mid-pack trip that he wanted, called upon her, and she was very green in the stretch. I wouldn't say very might be a little bit of an overstatement in some ways, but she was trying to wiggle around a little bit in the stretch when I think the whip was, given to her, and as in terms of encouragement. And I think with that in mind, I do wonder where she goes from here. I think she is going to be a price, assuming that she does go to the Kentucky Oaks, and a horse that you talked about, Nicole. She's faced good horses and she's been close. Yes, she hadn't been getting the big check and hadn't been winning those races, but maybe a filly that's coming around at the right time. And that's part of this equation. We kind of harp on it and we talk about it. It's not necessarily having the string of wins going into it. You have to be ready to roll on Kentucky Oaks Day. And so many things can happen along the way. And we'll see what she can do. She was training very well into this race. And then obviously it paid off this past Saturday.
Well, that's the key. You want to have these horses ready to peak on the first Friday in May. And we've talked a lot about the various prep paths that the connections have chosen getting up to this point and getting their last prep in. coming into some of the last preps, let's take a look at the points leaderboard and where Good Cheer and Ahavah and Bless the Broken and some others stand. A lot of fillies here that we'll see this coming weekend. Quiet Side, Simply Joking, the Queen's MG. The past couple of years, it's taken right around the 50-point mark to make the 14-horse Oaks starting gate. And so a lot could still develop here with these major point preps coming up. And, you know, I keep saying, remember, at this point of the year, Torpedo Anna had not made her 3-year-old debut yet, did so in the Fantasy, which is a race coming up this weekend. Malathot, a couple of years before that, had not made her 3-year-old debut yet. She debuted in the Ashland at Keeneland, a race that we'll see in a couple of weeks. So this is, you know, I think if you're in, say, the top 5 or so here, you're safe. But this is by no means a set group about 6 weeks out.
No, and it really depends what some of these fillies do. You mentioned 5G, the Queen's MG. They have the possibility to pick up some points, and that would move them up. It also becomes a sort of a game. You don't necessarily need to win these races, but second probably gets you in. Third may not. It really depends who goes to the Ashland, who's going to go to the Ashland that is using it just for a prep to the Oaks, and they have their secured spot. But that could change if there's an upset, right? There's a horse that upsets and wins, or a second, they get 100 or they get 50 points, and then this leaderboard will really shift.
Well, we'll be looking for the next shifts in the leaderboard this weekend at Gulfstream Park and at Oaklawn. As you mentioned, as we look at the schedule of preps, these are worth 100 points to the winner. Even if you have no points at this point, you could win and be in. 50 to second, you could potentially win and be in, depending on where the cutoff lands. You know, we'll be looking for some movement out of this weekend's races.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the fillies fare in there. I think at Gulfstream Park, it'll be interesting from a pace perspective, which we'll talk about in one of our other prep previews here, specifically for that race. I think that's an intriguing sort of field to dive into. And then at Oaklawn, in terms of field size, a little bit of a bigger field in the Fantasy, but some fillies that really blossomed in the Honeybee, the prep for the Fantasy, and some others that didn't show their best, and they'll try to rebound on Saturday.
Well, as you mentioned, we're going to be taking a closer look at both of those prep races, previewing them horse by horse here on DRFTV. And then next week, we'll bring you right back here to the Oaks Countdown to take a closer look at how things have shaped up on the road to the Kentucky Oaks. See you next week.